think first of all, I would like to say thank you to the organizers, Mr. Kingsley and the team that has put this together and made this possible. I think it's an important work that you're doing. I'm just listening to the earlier speaker, Biodun Folawiyo. Very exciting story. I could relate with a lot of aspects there, and you'll probably hear something similar from my own story as well. I will have a mix of telling the story of how I transitioned, as well as dropping some key highlights, or what I call like signposts, for what led me to where I am today. So by the way of introduction, my name is Ife Odedere. I'm currently a chartered marketer. I work as a senior brand manager. Basically what I do is I manage brands. But prior to that, I wasn't always in marketing. I didn't always study marketing. I actually studied medicine, like our anchor said. I studied medicine and surgery. I actually graduated, and I practiced for a few years before I made that switch. So what I'm going to be discussing today is what I did to make that switch happen. It's a story of determination. It's a story of self-awareness, self-development, and a lot of other things that came into play to make that dream actually happen. I'll talk about the first signpost, which is seeds. Many of us here, and I see there are a lot of adults here as well, growing up in the 90s in Nigeria here, there were certain seeds that were planted in our minds as kids. So you are a child, you're sitting in a school play, and they say, what are you going to be in the future? There's this big four that they're always talking about: doctor, accountant, engineer, and if you are fortunate, they'll mention lawyer as well. So that moment in time is seed planting. Because as a child, you're seated in those places, and every time you're hearing presentations, you're hearing doctor, lawyer, accountant, engineer, and you're telling yourself, I have to be one of these four. So that was our first introduction into the world of careers, into what a future would look like: doctor, lawyer, engineer, accountant. And those were the seeds. I remember my dad came from our hometown, and he delivered a message from my grandfather, who I never met. And the message was this. In fact, that's the only message I recall from my grandfather, which was, study your books and make sure you become a doctor. And of course, as the young, impressionable child that I was, I needed to carry that flag and get my family name into one of these prestigious professions. So the seed for studying medicine was already planted. And I'm going to say that because I get a lot of questions around, did they force you to study this course? Did they say you must do it? I'm like, no, actually I made my choice before I got into the university. I studied for it. I actually worked hard for it. Now, back to the question of seeds. We had a GSS 3 then, where you write a JSC and you move into senior secondary school. Now, there was a pivotal moment in that place which I believe our educational system did not take care of, which was the aptitude test. The first set of papers you write in your GSC is the aptitude test. But for some reason, I think that was just used as a, how do I put it now? It just felt like ticking the box. Because aptitude tests, ideally, are designed to help measure your aptitude and decide where you should be going to. What happened in my own case, and I believe in a lot of people who passed through that educational system then, was where you went to in SS class in senior secondary school was determined by the grades that you got. So I did, I think, 11 subjects in GSC. I had 10 A's, 1 C. And therefore, I was like, in case of highest bidder, where do you want to go to? So I said, I'm going to science class. Now, I always wanted to be a doctor. I had a great grade. And of course, I just chose science class. And that was it. In that period, I never had a conversation with the guidance counselor about, what are your inclinations? What is it that you love to do? How does this help to fit into your career and all of that? I never had that conversation, which in the next 2 slides you will have seen there, guidance counseling. Apparently, guidance counseling is a structured approach that helps individuals to explore their tendencies, their temperament, and all of these things, and helps to shape the choice of what they're going to do or the kind of courses that they're going to choose in the future. So we move from guidance counseling into what is the next phase, self-discovery. Now, self-discovery, because when I was in, I think, 300, okay, the turning point was when I was in 200 level. And I have a colleague here who also passed through the College of Medicine. Now, 200 level in College of Medicine is very brutal. So when people say they want to study medicine, it's because they've not heard of 200 and 300 level in the College of Medicine. It's very brutal. It's designed to weed out those that don't have the mental or physical capacity to study medicine. It is a brutal period. I remember after writing my 300 level exam, I said, I will not wish my enemy to write this paper again. That's how mentally taxing it was. But after studying for the 200 level exam, I studied so hard. I was expecting out of 3 subjects, I would have at least 1 distinction to show for my efforts. And just like the earlier speaker here, I was very big on grades. And getting to university, I was like, yes, we're going to get it. We're going to smash it. I put in all the time and effort, and I got 3 credits. Now, for someone in medical school, that was an achievement. A lot of people were like, wow, great guys, man, you guys are brilliant. I was sad. For like 3 days, I was just by myself. I didn't talk to anybody. But it was a turning point for me because it opened my eyes to the fact that I needed to explore the world beyond just the books in front of me. And it's very important for parents. A lot of times we want to have our kids be the first, it's good, but you need to let your kids also be rounded. And if you're a student, it's good for you to pursue your studies, but you also need to be well-rounded. You need to see the world around you. So getting into 300 level, I said, okay, no, we're going to slow down a bit on this and start to see the world. So I started to read books. I started to read books like 7 Habits of Highly Effective People, and a lot of other leadership, self-development books. Self-discovery says the process of understanding your true self, your values, your needs, and wants. And I started to see a part of me that, leadership, I started to learn a bit about myself. And as God will have it, in the next slide, I see serendipity, which means chance, luck. Our curriculum was changed midway just before we graduated. Now, typically, you have clinical medicine in 400 level, 500 level, and then in 600 level, you do community medicine, where you go into the communities, public health, basically. You are educating people. For some reason, the faculty decided to change that and say 400 level clinical medicine, 500 level community medicine. Then when you get to 600 level, you resume your clinical medicine. The implication for me, and for a couple of us back then, I had a good friend who is now a pastor and an inventor now, also from medical school, was that we had extra time on our hands. Extra time. Like in medical school, time is really it's luxury. And what that meant was there was extra time, I read more books. And I started reading things like Built to Last. And I came across that book, and I'm like, this sounds like something I want to do. Your organizations, leading, management. But of course, I didn't know what it was. But I was like, this sounds like something I want to do. How am I going to know about it? Interestingly enough, around that time, Daystar was doing this leadership academy. So again, because we had time on our hands, the curriculum was not as tasking and all of that, we could skip a few classes. I'm not recommending that for you guys. But we could skip a few classes and come over to Daystar then, listen to people like Leke Alder, and we're just being immersed in this new world and hearing a lot of possibilities and all of that. Now, I decided in the next slide, you see what we call electives. Now, our school used to do an elective then, where you go to another country or you go to another university to spend a month in an area of study that you think you are going to do in the future. Now, I was at a critical juncture in my life. I was at 500 level. We'll be graduating in a year's time, and I need to make a decision. At that point, you need to decide if you're going to continue medicine, if you're going to further in your residency, if you're going to be a general practitioner, or you want to just drop out entirely. I need to make a decision at that point in time. So that elective was going to be a litmus test. So I convinced my parents, we were able to get money. I went to UAE, I think that was Abu Dhabi. And this was the point why I did that. I told myself, maybe the reason why I don't want to practice medicine is because things in this country are bad, and things were really bad. I mean, sometimes we have theater sessions and they'll take lights, and you're like, what kind of medicine is this? What's going on here? So I needed to separate the desire to not practice medicine, maybe due to the fact that the environment was not conducive, from the fact that maybe inside of me, I actually had something else entirely that I wanted to do. So I went into this environment here in Abu Dhabi, world class. I had a German consultant that was with me for an entire 1 month. I did emergency medicine. I did cardiology as well. In that 1 month duration. And the thing is, I don't know those of you that watch ER or Dr. House and all of those things. Yeah, so no, you have those expectations that that's what you're going to be doing. So I said, if I can go to this place and I don't get that vibe, then there's a problem. After 1 month, I came back to Nigeria and I was like, nah, I'm not sold. I can't do this for the rest of my life. And then the real trouble began.